guys, it's Ty and welcome back to my channel. So today I am going to be talking about all of the books that I have DNF'd this year. I only have 8 that I need to talk about. For the most part, I have had a really good reading year. I have enjoyed most of the things that I have picked up this year. I will say that some of the books that I have picked up, I probably should have DNF'd. I may have suffered through some of these, but it's fine because in the end, I only ended up with 8 actual DNFs. So I will start off with the book that I attempted to read first at the beginning of the year and just kind of work my way down from there. I won't go into like a full synopsis for each of these books. I won't go into what I liked, what I didn't like, and all of that because let's be honest, we are really here to talk about all the things that I didn't like and what made me want to DNF these books. I will have links to all of my reviews and full thoughts on these in case you guys are interested in that. So I will have those linked down in my description and in the cards. And there are 2 books that I haven't had a chance to actually do full reviews for. So I will probably talk about those in a little bit more detail, but those will be the last 2 books that I talk about in this video. So we will go ahead and get started. So the very first book that I'm going to start off with, and the one that I attempted to read in January, is Our Violent Ends by Chloe Gong. And that is the second book in the These Violent Delights duology. And that is a young adult fantasy duology. And this one is a Romeo and Juliet retelling set in the 1920s Shanghai. I really enjoyed These Violent Delights. I believe I gave that one like a 4 stars. So I was really excited to read Our Violent Ends. With that being said though, I didn't really think These Violent Delights needed a second book. I mean, since it is a Romeo and Juliet retelling, and with how These Violent Delights ended, I could see why we got Our Violent Ends, but I still don't think we needed it. And so when we got to Our Violent Ends, I got about 200 pages in, which was about a little less than 40% of the way through. I just thought it was really boring. We ended up following a lot more perspectives than we did in the first book. They were going to like a lot of different places, which normally I wouldn't have a problem with because I like stories where we just aren't sitting in the same location throughout the whole book, especially when we're talking about fantasy stories. So whatever it was in this book, it just was not working out for me. I just was not interested in anything that was happening in that book, and I was just bored. That's the only way that I could describe Our Violent Ends. I was bored to death, and I was just not interested in the romance between Romeo and Juliet. It just was not working for me. I just was not connected to anything that was happening in that book. It was just one of those things where maybe I just wasn't in the mood. Maybe I just needed to put it down and I'll just pick it up later. But anytime I put the book down, I just did not want to ever pick it back up. Anytime I get like that, if I put it down and I just find myself never reaching for it, it's just going to be like that later. So I just decided, you know what, I'm just going to give up, and I DNF'd it. And I honestly have not thought about that book again. I almost forgot that I read it. So that is an indication that I needed to be done with that book. That even if I would have set it aside and thought that I was going to pick it up later, I wasn't, because I forgot about it. So that was a DNF that needed to happen. So the next one that I want to talk about is How High We Go in the Dark by Sequoia Nagamatsu. And this is a adult dystopian novel. And this is one of those scenarios where I would say that this was a it's me, not you type of situation. And my first problem that I had going into this one is I just was not aware that this was a short story collection. I'm not sure how I missed it. I just didn't get the memo. I just was not aware of that going into it. Then when I got into a couple of the short stories, I just was not connecting with them. So this is just basically about a virus that has been released into the world. And then each of the short story collections is about how that virus has affected these people within that short story. I'm not sure if, later on, if these are all connected. Didn't get that far, but that's what I got from the short stories from as far as I got. And I think I got through like maybe 4 or 5 of the stories. But it's really, they're sad. They are kind of dark. Some of them I just didn't understand. Like I said, I wasn't connecting with them. But if you were going to pick this up, you just really need to be in a really good headspace, because this is a short story collection that I feel like will bring you down real quick. However, even though I DNF'd this one and I just was not connecting with anything and I did not understand some of them, a lot of people seem to really enjoy this one. I don't have a physical copy of it anymore because I did end up giving this book to a friend, because it was just one of those books that I feel like I didn't get anything from this. Maybe somebody else will. So if you do decide to pick this up, 1, know that it's a short story collection. 2, you just need to be in a good headspace when you pick this one up. But yeah, this one just did not work for me. The next one that I have here that I attempted, and I'm gonna say I tried really hard with this one, and this is Book of Night by Holly Black. And this was one of my most anticipated reads for this year. So was that last one, but that's fine. But this one, I really tried with this, and I only made it like maybe 70 pages of the way through. Again, this was just really boring, and I did not understand. I was really looking forward to this one because the magic in this one, this is a adult fantasy. This is, I think, supposed to be Holly Black's first adult fantasy book. I think everything she's done before this was young adult, I believe. But this is following characters that are dealing with magic that involves shadows. It just sounded really good, but it was confusing. The magic to me was confusing. The plot was confusing. None of the characters grabbed my attention. It was just boring. And the 70 pages that I got through took a really long time. I think it took me like a week to get through 70 pages. And this book isn't that long. It's not that long. This is, hold on, let me tell you. This is it's only 304 pages. Barely 300 pages. It took me a week to get through 70. I did not like this. And this is a book that it seems like you are either really going to enjoy it or you are not going to enjoy it. And I could not finish it. I did not like this at all. So yeah, I had to DNF this one. So then I tried to read The City of Dr. Moreau by J.S. Barnes. And this is a follow-up to The Island of Dr. Moreau. And this is more of a horror novel as opposed to The Island of Dr. Moreau was more science fiction. And I read this one in anticipation for The Daughter of Dr. Moreau by Sylvia Moreno Garcia, where I did a video where I was reading all of the books about Dr. Moreau. Obviously, I DNF'd this one. It started off really good and really creepy, and the idea of this was really good because we are following the events after what happened on the island of Dr. Moreau, where these characters are getting together and trying to find Dr. Moreau. I don't really know what happened after they found him because, like I said, I DNF'd this. So I'm not really sure what happened. But it started off really good. But then every few chapters, we were getting introduced to more characters. It became too many characters. And then we were moving to a different location. So they would go from one location to a new location. And then we were introduced to a set of new characters, and then it would just repeat, but we were never going back to the other characters that we were just getting introduced to. So I didn't understand why we were doing that. Again, maybe if I would have kept reading, I would have found that out, but I didn't want to because I was getting bored. And then the horror element that gripped me in the beginning disappeared, and that's what I thought the whole purpose of the story was for. So I just didn't understand what we were doing in this story. And because I was getting bored and I was getting confused, I just decided to DNF this one. I thought the beginning idea of this was interesting, but just not interesting enough to keep me wanting to read more. So then the next one that I tried to read is The Other Black Girl by Zakiya Delilah Harris. And this is marketed as adult mystery thriller. I just found it to be boring. That seems to be a theme with a majority of these books. The mystery was lacking. It was not very thrilling. So the thing with this one is the main character, Nella, was working at this publishing house. She was like one of the only Black people there, and she really wanted diversity in the workplace. When she finally got the diversity that she was asking for, she didn't know what to do with it. So when another Black girl got hired, Hazel, Nella felt threatened. And that was my problem with this book. That was one of the things that really irritated me about this story. Not only was it boring and slow, I really did not like the character of Nella. Nothing that she did made sense. Her thought process did not make sense to me at all. Here you are complaining that there's no diversity in the workplace. You finally get the thing that you asked for, and then you complain the whole, well, not the whole book because I didn't read the whole book, but the pages that I got through, all you did was complain that there was another Black girl. The thing that you wanted, you complained about. Makes perfect sense. Okay, so then, you know, she gets this note left on her desk telling her that she needs to leave the office. That was the whole mystery of the book. Well, the part that I read. And by the time that happened, I no longer cared. I was not invested in the story anymore, and I kind of stopped reading. We also were getting like these weird flashback chapters that were confusing, and anytime that we were getting those, I kind of was spacing out because I was listening to this on an audio and I just did not care. I ended up looking up online what happened at the end because a lot of people said they did not like the ending of this book. I could see why, because it's not great. The ending of this is not great. There's already a movie floating around out there about pretty much what the ending of this book is. So yeah, not a great ending to this. Then my other big problem about this is that this is one of those books that is compared to Get Out. I don't like when a lot of stories are compared to Get Out because usually they're not good comparisons. A lot of the stuff that takes place in Get Out it's done very subtly, and you question a lot of the things that take place in Get Out. That's part of the appeal of that movie. You have to sit back and question a lot of the things that is going on in that movie. In this, you don't question anything that's happening. You know exactly what's happening. It's in your face. Nothing is done in a subtle way. This author does not make you question what is going on. At least to me, it was very clear to me. Maybe other people, when they picked this up, they had to question what was going on. It was very clear to me. Very clear. I don't know if it's because I have been in Nella's situation. Maybe it's because I've seen this stuff happen before. Maybe it's because it just has to do with the things that you have experienced in the workplace. I'm not sure, but nothing was subtle in this. So it's a hard sell for me when people compare things to Get Out. I think people need to stop. But I did not like this at all. So I was hesitant going into this one anyways because I didn't see too many good reviews. And when I picked this up, a couple of people told me good luck. And clearly I needed it, but it didn't help because I did not like it. I did not make it through, and yeah, it was clearly another DNF. So then the next one that we have, which is right now a YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, everybody is eating this one up, and that is Babel by R.F. Kuang. This is also one of my most anticipated reads for this year, and I'm very disappointed that I did not like this one. I thought that I was going to love this one. I wanted to love Babel so much. I tried it. I was trying to read this book for weeks. I just could not get into the story. Again, not one that I'm going to go into a synopsis about, because at this point, I think everybody knows what Babel is about. If you don't know, there's a video somewhere. We'll start off with the same thing that I've been saying for almost all of these books. I thought this was slow. I thought this was boring. I thought a lot of this was very repetitive. As we all know, this focuses a lot on language, the use of words, but I just felt like we were having the same conversations over and over and over again, just in a different way. And at a certain point, I was just like, how many times can you tell me the same thing? There wasn't really a plot. I stopped around like 220, which was book 3, and not much was happening at that point. I'm okay with books that don't have much of a plot if I enjoy the characters. And I didn't really care for the characters because they weren't doing anything. Like they weren't doing anything. They were just going to class to talk about the same thing. And the thing that they were talking about wasn't interesting to me. The first time they talked about it, sure, this is interesting. The other 7 times they talked about it, I was tired. And this just did not work. There was also a lot of footnotes in here. I'm not somebody that's a fan of footnotes because they take me out of the story when I have to stop in the middle of a sentence to read a footnote that adds absolutely nothing to the story. I promise you, if you take the footnotes out of this book, you would miss nothing. Because with as far as I got in this book, the footnotes added nothing to the story. Nothing. Do they have information in them? Sure. But they didn't add anything to move the story along. So you interrupting the story for what? I just did not enjoy this. I think this was written for a very specific audience and it just was not for me. I did enjoy the magic in here, but again, we didn't get a lot of that. And that's not what this story is for. But I was not aware of that going into this. I think my expectations of what this was very wrong before I picked this up. Had I listened to a lot of the reviews before I bought this and before I started reading this, I would not have read it because it does not sound like something that I would enjoy. After listening to other people's reviews, it just doesn't. And that's okay. Because I'm not the audience for this type of book. Her other series, The Poppy War, that sounds like something, that's a series that I'm currently reading, but that's a series that sounds like something that I would enjoy. This does not. This is for a very specific audience. This was not for me, and I am okay with that. So these next 2 books are ones that I actually don't have reviews for. So I probably will go into just a little bit more detail about these. But the first one is The Passage by Justin Cronin. And this is one of the series that I was trying to get to by the end of the year. It's one of the backlist series that I have. And I was trying to get to this one because Justin Cronin has a book that was coming out the beginning of this year that I was really interested in. And I was wanting to get to this because I wanted to see, one, I already had this on my shelf for a long time and I was interested in this, but I wanted to read at the very least the first book in this series to see what his writing style was like, to see if I wanted to pick up the newest book that he was going to write. But after reading this one, I'm not so sure. So this one follows these 2 detectives who are part of this experiment that is taking place, and they are trying to go and locate this young girl named Amy, and we know that there's something special about Amy, and they want to bring her in and use her as a part of this experiment. And so we are following her. We're following these two detectives as they go and try to locate this girl Amy, and then we are slowly starting to learn exactly what this experiment is. I only got maybe to like page 200. We are following, like I said, a lot of characters. This is so slow. Again, my favorite words. This is so boring. Oh my God. This was a chore to get through. It was a slog. I cannot. I do not understand. Towards like the end of the 200 pages, because this is broken up in different parts, a lot happened and it was fast moving. You find out pretty soon what the experiment is. I don't want to say what it is because it doesn't say here. Yeah, I don't want to say what it is because, if you're interested in this, I don't want to spoil it for you. But, no, it's just slow. It's slow. Every couple of chapters or like page breaks, you're like following a different group of characters, and it's slow. And you're just trying to figure out what this experiment is, how everybody is involved in this experiment, and like how all of the pieces of this stuff is like put together. Is boring. I cannot. I had all 3 of the books in this series. I have no desire to keep going on with this. I tried to pick up the audiobook, and the audiobook was like 40 something hours, and I said, oh, I cannot support that. So I had to give this one up. There's nothing else that I can say about this besides it was slow, it was boring. None of the characters really interested me. I don't care about the detectives, the little girl. Good luck to the people in this world. I hope they make it. I DNF'd it. So the last book that I have, I had a feeling it was probably going to take me a little while to read it. And I had planned like a whole video up for it, around it, because I just figured I was going to have a lot of notes. I have a lot of tabs in it. And then I got to a certain part and I was like, I'm not enjoying this anymore. Again, it's really boring. It's slow. I don't understand the hype for this. That is Stephen King's It. I know there are a lot of people who have a lot to say about Stephen King. And after reading this, I can understand some of the things and some of the criticisms people have for Stephen King now. From what I am told, this is supposed to be one of Stephen King's scariest novels, and I did not get that. I have seen his old miniseries when I was like super young. Probably one of the first things that I remember seeing by Stephen King, and it scared me. One of the reasons why I don't like clowns now. And then I have seen the remake of it, God knows how many times, at least part 1. I don't know how many times. One of my all-time favorite scary movies, because I love the remake of Pennywise. Absolutely love it. So I finally picked this one up. I thought that I was really going to enjoy this. I did not. Again, it was very slow. Again, with the boring, it's boring. It's not scary. I'm not sure if I have been tainted by already knowing what happens in it. And then in my mind, now reading this, and this is, some of the stuff is the same. A lot of it is not. I got to page, almost 500 pages in. About 450 pages in. It's very slow. With the 450 pages that I got into it, a lot of that could have been cut out of this book. This book is too long for no reason, with nothing happening. This book is way too long. And I didn't even get to the good stuff. Like, I don't know. Nothing happened. I also have a few problems in the parts that I got to with King's writing, in some of the language that he uses in his writing. The biggest thing being with his use of the N-word. I'm surprised when I looked at a lot of his reviews for this book that a lot of people didn't point that out. And there are a lot of King fans, I completely understand. And a lot of people in general say, well, oh, you just have to look at the context in which he's writing it, which, right, you do. And the part that really got me is in one part of this book, he uses the N-word quite a bit, that I even marked it. So we all know that one of the characters, like one of the kids, he's black. And in one part of the story, his father is like telling him the story, and he uses that word 6 times to tell one story. But that's just in one little section of the book. And I literally counted how many times. And it was just like, but was that necessary to tell that one little story that you needed to use that many times? And that was just in that one part. And I'm not counting the other times that it was used before that, or how many times he's probably used it after. And then we're not going to talk about all the slurs he used when he was referencing the queer characters in this story, or how he talks about women in this story. It's kind of a turnoff. I just wasn't interested at a certain point. And then not only that, this is, again, it's supposed to be one of his scariest novels, and I didn't find anything scary about it. There were scenes with some of the kids and their interactions with it, but they were so few and far in between. We would get these scenes, and then there would just be, in between that, it would just be nothing. And every time I picked this up, this just started to feel like work. My video idea just flew out the window, and I no longer cared. And so as soon as I was reading this one in the passage at the same time, as soon as I finally decided to DNF both of those books, I felt a huge weight lifted off of my shoulders. I started this book in September. I did not DNF this one until the middle of November. So what, almost 3 months of trying to read this, and I only got to page 450? Yeah, no. This is a hard no for me. So that is all that I have for you guys. And again, any book that I have talked about in a review or have a dedicated review for, I will have those linked if you guys are interested. And I will see you guys next time. Bye.